revenue estimating conference here pretty soon. That's always kind of key.
When I lived in Los Angeles.
Yeah, well, I would imagine, yeah. Although we're so much better off than most states are.
Yeah, we are.
What's that? Yes, I just had her change it because I hadn't got the notice to her.
That's cool.
That we didn't want that to appear like it was a top priority.
I get you. Yeah. I was kind of like, that seems like a really specific top priority. I mean,
Right. Well, everybody thought having it at the top meant it was our top
right.
priority.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Some homeschool, as you know, we'll be back, but
Yeah.
we're gonna homeschool it.
For a while.
And then kindergartners. So some of the districts have seen their kindergartners, kindergarten numbers stay pretty stable. Ours are down, and there's some other districts, I think West Des Moines, Johnson, they're seeing some
Yeah.
kindergarten. Just the parents are redshirting their kids, starting next year, right? We could have started this year, but we're not starting next year. So we'll potentially have the small class, go to first grade next year, and then a big kindergarten class behind us, and that'll flow through the system potentially next 13 years.
Well, hopefully they've done a little bit with them so they're not coming in completely cold next year.
But that'll be interesting too, because you'll have a higher percentage of your kids.
Yes, I have 10 at one time, 10 or 11 at one time. It's kind of, there's definitely opportunities though too.
Yeah.
So we didn't,
I don't know, I just had them all there.
that was a bit of a surprise.
That's all we're
Because again, our estimated number would be way off, but it's COVID.
Yeah, well, a lot of things are off because of that. Uncharted territory.
Making sure we build up those basics mainly.
We'll manage. We were pretty cautious last session. Glad we were. You look around
Travis.
other states,
Good, how are you?
and now they're just begging
Just
for
know
money
what's happening.
from the federal government, which means us, to kick in and help them because they won't responsible. Got themselves in a big mess.
Somebody print it up for you.
Yeah, I printed it off. So now they want
No, I have it on here.
Oh, okay.
I have
You'll be,
to kick in.
I've been
their
changing,
states are
but
talking
not
about 20% cuts.
anything. I
Oh,
don't think for you.
yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Well,
I
that's
had
the
a
thing.
keyboard highlighted.
Reminds me
Well,
of
it's color coded
10%. Were you?
for myself.
You were not at that time.
Soul King.
It doesn't do any good to promise what you can't deliver.
Yeah, I mean, there were some larger forces at play in that, but certainly,
David,
10% could happen.
David Vaught, I distinctly remember, he was a state auditor. All summer he was saying, you can't do this, we're not gonna have enough money. And they just ignored him and ignored him until either late October or November.
She is paying attention just in case.
We're in big trouble. Then you're out there in the middle of the fiscal year and everybody's counting on that money.
Yeah, she has no card, so if there is anything, she'll send it our way and then we can decide if it's something we want to ask. Or, you know, maybe leave our basket.
I'm not being those.
No, it beats me. I don't know. Not like we chat them.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I guess I could ask her. I don't know. I don't want to come off as, where you at?
I think Claire is going to come, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think she would.
Well, I think she also had a conflict, but it got done earlier. But I don't know what the heck they're doing. I wasn't invited, whatever. We'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
Fine. Super party. I don't know if Weston Wayne School Board meeting tonight or what.
Candidate.
Yeah, but I think he picked us over West Des Moines.
I think it's Kristen.
I picked it over my own school district.
There you go.
Well, I work there. They'll tell me what to do.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Or one we never heard from.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what to say.
Yeah.
Well, they're trying to equalize that, but
Who's
yeah,
opposing stuff.
So we learned some lessons through that,
yeah.
And that's the area east
so
of
hopefully
the
we won't have to do anything.
south and east.
Yeah,
He's, yeah,
east and south.
yeah, I don't know
I think
exactly,
we're
but
okay.
Indian Order, et cetera.
Yes, we're-
So she pops in, I don't think so. I think Claire is here,
I haven't
she's just finding.
had any indications, at least at the
Basically, we
state
have everybody we need
level.
to start in 2 minutes.
I think we're gonna be okay. We ended up actually with a surplus again,
And I,
and revenues were better than what was expected.
try to
and
hit
we're
the
watching
weekend.
sales tax.
And DT from probably the mic.
Because the authorities are
Oh, yeah.
priorities. Yeah, it's important for us.
And then we can handle it.
Are we, waiting on Senator Celsi, or?
She is here. She went to the wrong door.
Okay, very good.
So her and Lucinda are coordinating.
Got it.
So she should be in here in a moment, and then we can start.
Very good.
If your crew's ready.
Is my crew ready?
We got one person who's here. She went to the wrong door apparently. So.
I'll do my.
There she is. Welcome.
How are you?
Hello, Senator.
Hello, how are you? Ryan, how's it going?
Can I get a picture of everybody before we get started? Those are always
And it'll be
exciting.
pretty quick. We're gonna have them introduce themselves first.
Try not to fall off the stage.
I thought we're gonna give them the most time.
3, 2, 1. Don't worry, they can't see your face, so
I was
you're so
smiling.
far away. Definitely socially distanced.
So are these all on? Do we need to do anything?
I would encourage you all to look at your microphone displays and double check that they're powered up.
How about that?
If the button's pushed towards the top, it's turned on. And
Kinda like
feel
this.
free to do it.
Test, test.
Alright. So they're all
Microphone
fine.
works.
So no,
Under the breath comments, because your mic's live.
Go to 3. Go to 3, please. Wherever you're comfortable, Chief.
Right there.
All right, well, I think we're ready to get started. Travis and I are going to kick off some welcome and introductions. Welcome to our 2020 Legislative Forum. This is our 4th time holding this event, and it is a partnership between the Norwalk Chamber, the school system, and the City of Norwalk, and the Norwalk, I think I mentioned, Area Chamber of Commerce already. We are thankful to the school district for providing this space so we can safely meet and live stream this event. As a reminder, everyone present is required to wear a face mask at all times. I see that everybody is following through on that request. DT, that should make you smile. We can't see it, but we know you're smiling. Well, just to get started with our introductions, my name is Luke Nelson, and I'm the city manager for the City of Norwalk.
And I'm Travis Stanley, president this year for the Norwalk Area Chamber of Commerce and co-pastor of Norwalk Christian Church Disciples of Christ. Welcome to our online audience who are watching live on YouTube and who will tune in later to the broadcast. If you are watching live and have any questions for candidates, you can post in the comments section of the post on Facebook where this broadcast is being shared, or Facebook message your questions to the Norwalk Chamber, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the evening, so if any of those questions come our way, we'll do our best to work those in. We do have a number of candidates and a limited amount of time tonight, so we will do our best to address any questions that arrive live, but we do encourage candidates to check out, and our representatives, our senators, to check out the posts on Facebook, and if you see anything on there you want to engage, any questions that may not have been addressed, feel free to do so in that space. We're honored tonight to have our legislators with us. We invited every state legislator, and since it's an election year, as we also invited every candidate running for office. All of you, your districts overlap the Norwalk Community School District, and so, as we say, we claim you whether you claim us or not. You have a district that overlaps some of the families that go to the Norwalk School District, so thank you for being here and participating tonight. The purpose of the event is twofold. It's a chance for the school, city, and chamber to develop a closer relationship with those who seek to represent us. It's also a chance for the community to ask questions and get to know you better. They've submitted questions. A number of our community members have submitted questions ahead of time, and those have shaped the questions we're going to ask tonight. And we thank every one of you for being here and for your ongoing relationships with the city, school, and chamber. First, we'd like to introduce our state senators who are present tonight. We have Senator Claire Celsi, who is in the midst of her first term as a senator from District 21, so welcome. As well as Senator Julian Garrett, who I believe you're serving your second term as senator from District 13. They're not currently up for re-election, so you kind of have it easy tonight. You're gonna talk about what you will for sure do for us. Also tonight present, candidates for state representatives. First Representative Stan Gustafson, who's in his third term as a representative from District 25, which encompasses most of the Norwalk area, and is seeking re-election. And then also seeking to be a representative for District 25 is Ryan Marquardt, who his district, yeah, same, what I just said. Also with us tonight is Aaron Sewell, a candidate from District 42, who that district kind of dips into Cumming and Arilla, and those are students that come right here to Norwalk to school. So welcome, Aaron Sewell. Representative Kristen Sundy is our current representative from District 42, serving her first term. And she had another event tonight and could not join us. Also not present is Representative Scott Orth, the incumbent from District 26, which is kind of south of Norwalk in Indianola. He's out of town with his other job, his day job, and couldn't be here. And his candidate opposing him in District 42 is Brooke Bowden, and she did not respond to our invitation tonight, so she's not present as well. So to those who are present tonight, welcome, and thank you for being here.
All right, well, next up, we are going to do some candidate introductions. These are intended to be 1 minute per candidate. And Senator Garrett, we're going to start with you.
Well, thank you first of all for hosting us this evening. I really enjoy these kind of get-togethers where we can exchange ideas and so on. I live on a farm south of Indianola with my wife Nancy. And by the way, Nancy is my Senate clerk, so we work together constantly in the Senate, and she's a big asset to me. We have 3 boys. They're all adults and have moved away, so we're empty nesters. I have been in the legislature for several years now. I was first elected to the Iowa House in 2010, re-elected in 2012, and then was elected to the Iowa Senate in a special election in 2013, re-elected 2014 and 2018. I serve on the Appropriations Committee, Judiciary Committee, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. Serve on the Human Resources Committee and Local Government. I also chair the Justice System Appropriations Subcommittee that handles appropriations for most everything having to do with justice and public safety. The prisons, the courts, the Highway Patrol, Law Enforcement Academy, and entities like that. Again, I thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and look forward to the evening.
Thanks, Senator. Next up is Senator Scelsi.
Thanks for having us here tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to address your audience. I'm Claire Scelsi. I live in West Des Moines, but the southernmost part of my district encompasses the city of Cumming and the surrounding farmland. It's the only farmland in my district, so I do appreciate having a little bit of rural Iowa in my district. My mother is from Warren County, grew up in St. Mary's, not far from here. So when I saw the map of my district for the first time, I was really thrilled to have this piece of Warren County. It was just kind of awesome. So the things that you have listed on your legislative agenda could actually be my priority list of things. And I think what we've seen in the last couple of months during this pandemic is how some of the systemic things that are going wrong in our state have gotten worse during this pandemic. So I hope that we can discuss some of your priorities tonight and how the legislature can really aid the city of Norwalk and surrounding areas and make your lives better.
Thank you, Senator. Next up is Representative Gustafson.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for having us here this evening. My name is Stan Gustafson, and I'm represent District 25, and I already represented 7 years now, so this will actually be my 4th term, even though one of them was a half term. I followed after Senator Garrett when he left District 25. I remember that very well door opened about that far. Not that I blame them, and I talked very fast and went on my way. Anyway, I spent 26 years in the Marine Corps, and I've been an attorney almost 45 years, although I don't practice law in Iowa. I do have a finance degree from UC Berkeley, and my wife and I moved back here 15 years ago. She was born and raised in Dallas County, and we moved back here to be around grandchildren. And we have 11 grandchildren, 3 in West Des Moines, 2 in North Kansas City. So this is the place where most of the grandchildren are, so this is where we're at. And we enjoyed it very much, needless to say. And I am on the Judiciary Committee and Veterans Affairs, and also on economic growth, which I think may be a good thing for Norwalk because they're growing so fast and doing quite a job at it, I might add. So anyway, again, thank you very much for having us here, and enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Ryan Marquardt, you're up.
Well, my name is Ryan Marquardt. I'm a fifth-generation Madison County farmer, father of 2 young children, and I'm a lifelong Iowan. I'm running for Iowa House to restore balance to the legislature, to fight for local control issues, and to be an advocate for small farms and medium family-sized farms. So, my background is in with Iowa State. My background is in city planning. Did my undergraduate there with a focus on economic development. My master's degree is in agriculture, and I have a certificate in public management along the way. I have, I've worn a lot of different hats. So I recently finished a stint as the general manager of the Iowa Food Cooperative. I've worked in the Farm Conservation Office. I currently serve on the Greater Madison County Community Foundation. I serve on Madison County Planning and Zoning, and I serve on the Iowa Farmers Union Board. I have served as a township trustee in the past. And so what I have is just a broad set of background, and that really comes into play in this district. Because this district, Norwalk's the biggest community in the district, but the district stretches all the way through Madison County. So you have suburban communities like Norwalk in the district, but you also have agricultural hubs like Winterset, and then on the flip side, you get these smaller rural communities, like Maxburg and New Virginia. So my skill set really fits what this district needs and what it could really benefit from. So, thank you.
Excellent, thanks, Ryan. And Aaron Sewell.
Thank you, guys.
Test. My name is Aaron Sewell, and I really appreciate the Norwalk Chamber for hosting us. It's hard to engage with voters in this environment in safe and responsible ways. And it's really an awesome experience to be running, to try and earn their trust, and to try and earn, it's more than just about votes. It's about voting for people who you believe in. And we're trying to present ourselves as those candidates that people can believe in and that people want representing them. So any opportunity to engage and connect with voters is really exciting for me. So I'm really excited to be here and appreciate getting to share a stage with my home state rep, Senator Zelsey, and these other wonderful people who've been serving our legislature. So I teach 4th grade. I live in West Des Moines. I graduated Simpson College with a degree in political science and Iowa State with elementary ed. I love serving people, and I love just doing everything I can to move our state forward. So I want to be there for teachers, students, families. I want to bring us together and make great things happen.
Excellent, thanks, Aaron. I sure do like hearing all these references to Iowa State. It's good stuff. Well, next up, what we're going to do is we're going to go through our legislative priorities. Myself, Travis, and DT will take each one of our respective entities and kind of go through what we talked about as our main priorities that we want to take forward to this next year. So first up is DT McGee, the superintendent of the Norwalk Area Community School District.
Thank you all for being here tonight. I want to thank Travis and Luke and Lucinda Sperry for stepping in. I was approaching this is the school year, or this is the year for the school district to host. And we've had a few things going on since March. And so I said, hey, if you want to take something off my plate, doing all the behind the scenes work. And so I really appreciate all their efforts. So for our school district, these are board approved legislative priorities. These have been submitted to the Iowa Association of School Boards. So school funding policy. We support a school foundation formula that provides sufficient and timely funding to meet education goals. Supplemental state aid. We support setting supplemental state aid at a rate that sufficiently supports local districts' efforts to plan, create, and sustain world-class schools and setting supplemental state aid within the statutory requirements. Mental health. We support efforts to establish comprehensive community health systems, mental health systems, to offer preventative and treatment services and comprehensive school mental health programs. Standards and accountability. We support continued progress in the development of rigorous content standards and benchmarks that reflect the real-world knowledge and skills students need to graduate from high school prepared for college or to enter the workforce. And once again, I want to thank all of our representatives and candidates that are running, especially for our representatives who had a heavy lift this past legislative session under some unique and trying circumstances. So we really appreciate your leadership, helping us to navigate through this pandemic. So really appreciate that. But those are the Norwalk Community School District legislative priorities for this year.
Excellent. Thanks, DT. And huge credit to you and the other faculty, staff at the school. You guys have done a tremendous job, given all the challenges that even the city has thrown at you. Okay, for the city of Norwalk, we have a few priorities here. Our first one is the Highway 5 interstate designation. This is an effort for the Highway 5 bypass that goes around the south portion of the city of Des Moines. It is currently labeled as a highway, has a highway designation, and we'd like to see that move to an interstate designation. We still have a few things to make happen along the way, but we do need legislative support to make those things happen. Next up, the Iowa DOT investment in Highway 28. We've seen some tremendous improvements by the DOT and the state highway system throughout Warren County, and we're really ready to now take that next step and see those improvements happen further north as you go into the metro area through Norwalk. Next one is local control. I'm sure many of you hear this from League of Cities, from school, even from the school districts to some extent. We really want to make sure that those decisions that are made closest to home, right here with our local elected officials, that we do our best to make sure that those authorities are left with that city council and mayor of local city governments. And the last one here, the multifamily tax classification. There was a rollback done a number of years ago on multifamily residential that went back to the residential, so rolls back 50%. We just continue to fight to see that go back in the other direction. The cities and the schools both face pretty significant revenue challenges associated with some multifamily. School certainly introduces a lot of students, but we'd like to see that tax designation go back to more of a commercial setup.
And I will be presenting the legislative priorities for the Norwalk Area Chamber of Commerce. And just a forewarning, the next step after this, we're going to give you 90 seconds just to respond to these in any way that you want. This will be your longest kind of chance to respond. Everything else will be about a minute. And so you have them in front of you, so I hope you've been paying attention. But the priorities for the chamber, first, and all of these really center around support for our businesses as well as the workers within our businesses. But first is state assistance for childcare. Now more than ever, we need expanded childcare resources that aid families who are struggling to get back to work in the midst of this pandemic. State assistance for small businesses, they continue to struggle during this pandemic, and we need additional robust assistance programs from the state level that protect these businesses, allow them to stay open and keep workers employed. Expanded unemployment resources. The economic impact of the pandemic to workers continues. It will continue into the future. So we need strong state support for unemployment issues, ensuring Iowa continues to have that strong workforce that we're so proud of. Restore the property tax backfill, which provides needed funding for growing communities like Norwalk. And then state regulations, corporate taxes, those things really continue to make Iowa and Warren County in particular an attractive place to start or keep a business. And finally, affordable or workforce housing. As Norwalk area grows, workforce housing needs have increased. Teachers, skilled factory labor, retail workforce, and others should have the option of affordable living within the community they work. So those are the priorities for the Norwalk Area Chamber of Commerce. And we'd like to give...
this is you still. Well, thanks, Travis, for going through your priorities for the chamber. Just as Travis had mentioned to you, to give you a heads up, that we're now going to open the floor to each one of you to go through in about a minute and a half to respond. We realize that's not enough time to go through every single one, but certainly you could probably pick out a few of those to summarize. So let's see, Senator Celsey, why don't we start with you this time?
Thank you very much. I do have a few comments to make on your legislative priorities, which, as I said, are all right in line with things that I would support. As far as local control goes, I'm sure you've probably noticed that the legislature, which claims to be pro-local control, has really, not kept its promise to give cities and counties that control over their own destiny. And I would really like to see that stop. So I support laws and policies that allow communities to make up their own mind about things that affect them. Like you noted, fireworks would just be one small example. But it's other things like, density policies and things like that that really vary from community to community. You don't need the state coming in and telling you how to run that. So I've been disturbed by a few of the laws that have been passed in the legislature in the last few years that have really broken that promise. I agree with your wish for a rollback on that 2013 valuations law. I think it was kind of a short-term deal to get some other priorities passed, and it's just not working out in the long run. As far as the school priorities, I could not be more in line with DT's wishes here, especially mental health funding. It's been 2 years now since we passed the children's mental health bill, and magically, there's nothing in the budget for it. It doesn't matter who votes for it. I think it was unanimous in the legislature if it doesn't get funded. And it has to happen. We can't wait another year. And that's both the adult and the children's system. We need to get it funded permanently. I support a mix of local...
10 seconds.
Oh. I support a mix of local property taxes, like county property taxes, and state aid, so that it's sustainable into the future.
Thanks, Senator. Next up is Representative Gustafson.
Thank you very much. Let me give a general overview in terms of how I see things when it started, and I'll start discussing some of the specifics. I think with what we're going through right now with COVID-19, the number one issue when we gavel back in January is getting the economy back on track. COVID's harmed many small businesses, and we have to see what we can do to get those up and running again. And that is, I see, part of the list that you have. And obviously it's very necessary to get everybody back to work. I mean, Iowa is one of the top states for having people working. Unemployment was like 2.4%, something like that, which was maybe second best in the nation. It's close. We're now at just over 7, but we still are shooting for better than that. What is interesting about this is you may have seen the article in the Cedar Rapids Gazette, or I think it was August 4th. James Lynch wrote an article, and he's talking about that Iowa as being the most resilient economy by state in the nation. And that was decided by the National Council of State Governments.
15 seconds.
Say again?
15 seconds.
15 seconds.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my hearing, I still have a Marine Corps residue there. Anyway, the article said that the National Council of State Governments said that Iowa was the number one state, and it was going to be the best, most prepared to get out of this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Next up, Ryan.
Looking over these priorities, there isn't really a priority that I don't disagree with. I think I mean, from the local control issues, I've been an advocate for local control issues for a long time, from, you know, counties choosing their own destiny to the fireworks issue, where there have been times in the past where my opponent has done things like limit local control for jurisdictions with regards to how counties choose their supervisors, or voted to strip counties the ability to set minimum wages. So, you know, I'm a strong advocate for local control, and I will fight that to the very end. When I look at these other issues that a lot of them really pop out. The mental health care issue. I mean, look, we have an unfunded mandate to fund a children's healthcare system. Our healthcare regents just don't really have any additional resources put before them, but they have a mandate to develop this system. We really need to address that at the state level. Really, the reality is that COVID laid bare a lot of the issues that the state had underlying things, from child care access was always a problem before COVID. It's a bigger problem now. The reality is that child care access, as I've told people time and time again, child care access is solving child care access is an economic development issue, because it's a workforce issue. So you need to, in order to address your workforce issues, you really need to address your child care access issue. And I would also be a big supporter of the multifamily tax certification. I mean, the reality is we've seen Chief Staples, and we know that those multifamily units, they are more service intensive for our communities, and we need to see that rollback go away so that the communities have the resources to pay for those facilities.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Next up, Aaron.
I want to start with thinking about local control as well. I've had plenty of neighbors in West Des Moines, where I live, in the Valley Junction area, complain about why isn't the police doing anything about fireworks? Why can't they catch these guys? We know they're doing it. And the way the laws and regulations are written out, it makes it difficult for the city to defend their people, to protect their neighborhoods. And the city's they're just asking for help in being allowed to control that as well. So local control, it's because we have so many communities across our state, so many different communities. We have the rural communities, we have the urban communities that need so many different things. So if we can let our local leaders have as much control as possible, then it usually creates better communities, better societies. At the same time, a lot of issues, local control especially, is an unfortunate subject of the politics of convenience, where we have one political side using it when it's convenient to them, and another side that uses it when it's convenient to them. And we really just need to find a way to sit down and work through these issues. In regards to all these education priorities, I haven't been teaching long, but I've learned a lot. I've been teaching about 5 years, and I've seen, students are a product of their homes, their communities, the socioeconomic side of it, and teachers are doing double the work to pump out not only educated students, but students who are part of society as well.
Thank you, Aaron. And finally, Senator Garrett.
Well, looking at these goals, and there are an awful lot of them, as you've said, just in a general way, I don't disagree with most all of them, but of course, that's a different thing than to talk about a specific bill to implement them, and that's what we have to really look at. It doesn't accomplish a lot to just talk about generalities. You got to have a bill, and then the question is, do you support the provisions of that particular bill? And so that's the way I look at these things. I do want to point out a couple things. In the legislature, we have kind of a constant back and forth between the taxpayers and then the people that are looking for appropriations and additional money. I have served on the Appropriations Committee in the legislature every year that I've been there. In fact, that's one of the reasons that I ran in the first place, because our budget back at the time, in 2010, was a mess. Your viewers would probably recall that back at that time, Governor Culver had his infamous 10% across the board cut because he and the legislature had over appropriated, and late in the fall, in the middle of the fiscal year, they realized they didn't have the money to fund the things that they had voted in. And my view was that's just not the way to run state government. And I have worked really hard on the Appropriations Committee to make sure that we didn't overpromise, that we could fulfill the promises that we made, and we've done that. In fact, even with the virus situation this year, we were able to have a balanced budget and ended up with a surplus.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. So for the remainder of our time, we're going to go back and forth between the two of us, asking some Q&A. Some of the questions tonight have been pre-submitted from constituents or from those of us hosting the event. And we continue to offer the opportunity for those watching online to submit questions. If you're able, we'll be monitoring that. If we get any, we'll do our best to work those in. Our goal is to be done somewhere in the 8:15 to 8:30 range, closer to 8:15 preferably. And so we're going to give answers just a minute. I actually gave you 15 seconds extra because I forgot to start timing when Senator Celsey started, so I gave everybody the same amount of time. But I'm conditioned now, so we're going to be a little more better with our timing. So you have a minute to answer, which isn't a lot of time, but I think you can say a lot in a minute. So the first question, we've shared our legislative priorities from the city, chamber, and school. What are your priorities in relation to us, to the cities, to local businesses, and to our school districts? And we're going to kind of move, giving everybody a chance to start. And so next will be Representative Gustafson.
So you would like to hear what I have to say?
Your legislative priorities.
Excuse me?
Your legislative priorities.
Your individual legislative priorities.
Yeah.
Got it. The most important thing for me is to balance the budget. We've done it the last 10 years. Senator Beer referred to the last year under Governor Culver, and that particular year, you had that 10% across the board cut. Now they had promised 4% in school funding that year. Not only did that not occur, but they had the 10% across the board cut, which resulted in 727 teachers statewide that go, which I think is a terrible, terrible thing. So we have balanced the budget the last 10 years, and in that time, it is, as I said earlier, it has made Iowa the #1 most resilient state financially, and that's what the National Council of State Government says.
15 seconds.
And so balancing the budget is the most important thing. We'll get to the other issues as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Marquardt.
Thank you. Thank you. For me, I really have two major tracks I've been working on. One is really looking at this local control issue. In Madison County, we're dealing with issues in terms of siting wind turbines within the county, and whether or not the state utility board wants to extend eminent control or eminent domain ability to power company. So we've been working really hard to make sure that we don't want to see the expansion of eminent domain, which is a taking of private property, to site those facilities. We want to make sure that that's voluntary. And then another one is a very personal one. I've been working really hard with a bunch of smaller and medium-sized farms to develop something called the right to farm small. So we've been looking at the code to figure out what tiny changes we can make to make it possible for small businesses, small farm businesses to operate in the state, and to just, you know, it's just little changes for the most part that we can make that would just make it possible for a lot of these small farms to really make a go of it.
Thank you. Aaron Sewell.
My main priorities are a quality education for everyone, this small business environment that supports families and people just trying to get a start at the American dream, and also just being responsible with Iowa tax dollars. And we like to look at those things separately, but they really all work together. If we're investing in Iowans responsibly, spending within our means and spending on things Iowans need daily, then we're helping them in education. We're helping support those small business environments. If we have small businesses that can start up in our communities and hire our families and hire these moms and dads and these single parents, they don't have to work 2, 3 jobs and hardly see their kids, and their kids come to school with their homework not done or with behavior issues that teachers have to deal with. So then we can support our teachers, we can support our classrooms, and we can invest in our future.
Thank you. Senator Garrett.
Well, my priorities, as well as most legislators, I think, are basically 3 areas: education, public health, and public safety, and addressing those needs in a responsible way, as I mentioned a while ago, so that we have a balanced budget, we don't overpromise, we're able to deliver on the promises that we've made. As I mentioned earlier, I chair the Public Safety or Justice System Budget Subcommittee, so I do have quite a little influence on our appropriations in that area. And I want to make sure that our folks that are in the public safety area providing for public safety have the resources to protect us all. That's the #1 job of state government and government as a whole, and we need to do a good job there.
Thank you. Senator Selby.
Thank you very much. I'll quickly list through my priorities just because of the time. #1, we need to manage the COVID-19 crisis. Our current governor is completely ignoring the fact that we have a pandemic in our state. So we need to get that under control. I just got a message right before I came here tonight that the first teacher in the West Des Moines Community School District passed away. That's the first one. There will be more. We also need to help our child care providers and our parents. We've lost almost 50% of the child care slots in Iowa, and we were already hundreds of thousands short. So that's a crisis. Then we need to make sure that health care is a priority in our state. And education funding, as DT alluded to, we need to make sure that this pandemic is not screwing up our funding formula so that next year we're short. And then mental health funding would be my last priority. Thank you.
Okay, our next question. Our educators have done an incredible job working with an incredibly difficult, changing situation. What steps will you take to honor educators who have put forth great effort during this pandemic? And Ryan, would you like to go first?
I think the best way to really recognize them is to make sure that we're doing everything possible to give them the tools and resources they need to be successful. We need to make sure that we are providing, making sure that we're setting state supplemental aid at a level that they can actually, predict and plan on. I mean, with the economic disruptions that we're dealing with right now, school budgets, city budgets, they're going through some tough times. They don't necessarily have a clean picture of what the future looks like, especially with the next quarter up ahead and the disruption in sales tax and things like that. So we need to do everything we can as a state to kind of help buffer them, the districts, and also by doing that, helping our teachers. Making sure that they have the PPEs, the other resources they need, making sure that they can bargain over health issues in the future so that they're in a better place to handle a pandemic.
Thanks, Ryan. Aaron.
Could you repeat the question real quick?
Question is, our educators have done an incredible job working with an incredibly difficult, changing situation. What steps will you take to honor educators who have put forth great effort during this pandemic?
Thank you. I'll take 50 seconds to finish that. Being in the classroom has really opened my eyes. I started out with a sub-authorization where I could sub in any district that allowed me to, and I got to see a lot of different ways teachers, administrations worked across the metro. Working full-time has opened my eyes even more, just all the time, the energy, effort they put in. Teachers want to feel supported. It's not always financial. They want to know that that we have their backs when it comes to making sure the classrooms have what they need, and that students coming into the classrooms have what they need, whether it's mental health or whether it's a warm food to eat. Because schools have become so much more than just education. So there's a lot we can do that doesn't just that can support our teachers and our administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Garrett.
Well, I'll just mention, last year, in spite of the virus and so on, we were able to raise funding for K through 12 education by roughly $100 million. We have always done our very best to provide for those in that field because that is so critically important. We have, over the last few years, worked to equalize funding based on some issues because of transportation costs, which vary from district to district. I think obviously if you're in a big rural district, your transportation costs are going to be more than an urban district.
15 seconds.
And we have also worked to equalize per pupil funding. So those are some areas that we have worked on and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Senator Scelsi.
Thank you. It's a great question. I believe we failed our teachers in this state. We've declared them essential workers and thrown them to the wolves, making them go back to classrooms where social distancing is impossible and their health is at risk, as well as the health and safety of students and their families. The governor bragged the other day that there's a $309 million surplus in Iowa and our rainy day funds are full. Well, it's pouring outside. We could use some of that money to fund our schools, rent larger facilities so that classrooms can space out, give our teachers hazard pay, and pay a little bit more so that we can get kids who are at risk and special ed students in large classroom settings with qualified teachers receiving hazard pay to come in and teach them, because we know that they're not getting as much from the pandemic online education as some other kids may be. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Gustafson.
Thank you. In the last 10 years, we have increased state aid by just under $1 billion, $968 million. And there are some years, for example, fiscal year 17, where the Revenue Estimating Conference had over-guessed what the revenue was going to be. And so we had promised K through 12, $135 million, and we had to actually de-appropriate halfway through the through the fiscal year to ensure that we were able to get them sufficient money so that K through 12 got what we told them that they were going to get. And actually, they wound up getting $137 million that year.
15
That's new money. New money. The point being is, yes, COVID is a very difficult thing, but if you notice on September 30, the budget this year closed with an additional $305 million in surplus. So again, Iowa is going to be one of the best states relative to coming out of this COVID. So what we can do for education is going to be along with some of the other things also. And I know we looked at childcare also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So as a chamber, we continue to hear stories of our local small businesses, in particular, restaurants and event venues that continue to struggle, but all of our small businesses are having a hard time struggling during this time. What resources would you propose that the state offer, not the federal government, they're doing their own thing, but what can the state of Iowa do to support our local small businesses during this difficult time? And we'll start with Mr. Sewell.
I've had the opportunity to talk with business owners in the Valley Junction area who own, there was a business owner who owned a beer hall. And I talked to him, and this was early when the shutdown, and he was really down in the dumps. I went there to support him. I got a growler, it's Pompeii. But he was frustrated because he had to close one of his locations. He fired a bunch of staff. Staff he had at his current location were really part-time. he said he had no idea how other businesses were going to survive, and a lot haven't. One of the biggest things we can do as leaders in our communities, as leaders in our state, is give these small businesses a chance to thrive and survive. You know, we always try to make sure we're attracting large businesses, but we need to look out for our businesses in our communities as well, and make sure they feel supported, that they have not overregulated with everything when they try to run a business.
Senator Garrett, same thing.
Thank you. The restaurant and bar business, they've had some real challenges. I think everybody knows that. We have a real problem balancing health and safety versus economic activity. And the governor's really worked hard to try to find that balance. It's not an easy thing to do at all. I think early on when the virus first hit, it was uncharted territory. It was very hard to know just exactly where that balance should be. On the whole, Iowa has done pretty well. Our death rate is very low compared to most states. I mentioned in the past, we have passed tax cuts for small business, and we've done other things to help small businesses. That's more in a general way than specifically zeroing in on restaurants and bars, although it helps them too. So I think we're just going to have to continue to try to find that balance, and hopefully most of them will be able to weather the storm. I know it's a really tough situation, but it's been tough for a lot of people.
Thank you. Senator Selzy.
Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, I believe so. What resources would you propose that the state offer to support local and small businesses during this difficult time?
Well, I think we just talked about the $309 million surplus and the full rainy day funds that are sitting there idling while Iowans are suffering. So I would use some of that money and run it through the Iowa Department of Economic Development, like the federal money, except this time I wouldn't make just the well-connected businesses go to their big bank that they already have a relationship with to get the money. I would make the money more available to small mom and pop businesses that don't necessarily have a bank account at Wells Fargo, so they can actually have access to the money. We basically threw them to the wolves during the pandemic. We, closed the first program within, a couple of weeks, and by then, all the big boys had already taken their share, and the crumbs were left for the mom and pop businesses in my district. So we need to be more equitable about how that money is distributed, and we have the money.
Thank you. Representative Gustafson.
Thank you. Relative to small business, that's one of the first things I heard recently at the State House. So I know it's being discussed, and we'll see what happens. I used to own I was part owner of a bar and restaurant in Los Angeles many years ago. So I do have a lot of sympathy for those that are in that business. It's a very difficult business, especially today. The other thing that we can do in Iowa is to create safe environments as opposed to certain cities around the country. And I think that's a very, very appropriate thing that we need to do. But yeah, small businesses are going to need help, and as Senator Kelsey says, that we do have the access to the
15.
money to get that done.
Thank you. Mr. Marquardt.
Thank you. One thing that's really impressed me through this whole process is especially really how well our small bankers have done in terms of reaching out and working with our small businesses. I think we extend that relationship that they have, and they've been working with federal programs. We bring that down at the state level with the givable loans, and we try to figure out how to use our rainy day fund to help work with our local bankers and local banking institutions to go out and really support these businesses in this state. because they need a floor put underneath them right now while they're triaging. Putting this floor underneath them not only helps them, but it helps their employees, and it helps, you know, save on other public services that we would have to provide as supplemental services during these times. So I think that's really the most direct way we could go ahead and do it. We have the cash, we have the rainy day resources, we have these banking relationships, and I think we should really tap that as a public-private partnership.
Thank you. The next question, do you support a statewide mask mandate? Why or why not? Senator Garrett, I think you're up.
Well, I would not support a statewide mandate, and here's the reason. Conditions vary a lot, even around Iowa. You know, it's one thing to look at Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, and so on. It's another thing when you're in a small rural county, Clark County, for example, just south of us here, or Decatur County, small rural counties, they have different situations than the bigger cities do. So it makes some sense. Again, the governor has worked on this all year long since this came up. And she has urged everybody to use common sense, to use masks, wash your hands, social distance, and so on. So I don't think it would be needed at this time to have a statewide mandate.
Senator Celsi.
Short answer, yes, we need a mask mandate because it's obvious that most people are not doing the right thing in our state. Otherwise, we would not have the rampant spread that we do. We're in the top 10 regularly. We're in the red zone here in Iowa, and some of the counties that are the most rural have the highest test positivity rates. A farmer called me the other day to talk about this, and I basically said to him, listen, when you're on your farm in your tractor by yourself, you don't need to wear your mask. But when you go into the Casey's to get your coffee, just put it on. It's not that hard. So yes, we need a mask mandate because people aren't doing the right thing. It's plainly obvious. Yes, it can be enforced. And the states that have enforced mask mandates are the ones who are doing the best as far as their test positivity rates. So we can do it. And the governor needs to lead by example and stop going around the state to her Trump fundraisers not wearing a mask. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Gustafson.
I don't think it should be a statewide mandate. I think that it should be urged to use masks when it's necessary. Clearly, if you're, as you say, out in the field by yourself, you certainly don't need to have one, or with your family members, etc. There are times when you need to do that, have them, but I don't think it should be mandated. Again, it should be a local control kind of an issue, where those that are in the more rural areas can control what they're doing, as opposed to being in a college town where the bars are open. That's a different situation.
Thank you. Ryan Marquardt.
On Friday, my second friend went into the hospital to be looked after. So it's not the first time I've had somebody taken out with COVID at this point. I think it's a local control issue. I think the governor should allow counties and cities to set the parameters that they want to set for themselves. I think she should get out of the way and let them do that. I mean, I recognize that there's a difference between that what works in Ames or Iowa City isn't going to be the same as Red Oak or Perry. Perry's a packing town, and they've had higher case levels there. So the reality is that one size doesn't fit all, but you need to allow them the tool at their disposal.
Thank you. Aaron Sewell.
I have engaged with a lot of teachers. I have friends who are teachers who want to be there for kids and West Des Moines schools, especially on the eastern side of West Des Moines School District, there's a lot of low-income kids and families that moved in from other countries who parents work all the time. Those teachers are concerned for their families. They are concerned for their health. At the same time, they want to be there for their kids. So they're excited to be there for them. And we have to do everything we can to be healthy there. In regards to statewide, I was a big fan of the idea of a hard shutdown when this started, just to make sure we had things under control. At this point, I think we need to make sure we have local control and giving them the power to control, especially those hotspots, giving the county and the cities the power to control that and to help keep their citizens safe, working in concert with the health departments and the state to figure out what is the best moves. But it's a big issue, and we need more cooks in the kitchen to help solve it.
Thank you. So something completely different. One of the questions submitted to us, would you author, co-author, or support legislation to end the change, and this is very timely, in a month, end the change between daylight saving time and standard time in Iowa, and adopt one permanent time for the state? So do you support ending daylight saving time? And I don't remember where we started. Senator Selsey.
I have to admit, that's pretty low on my priority list. I don't have an opinion, so when Illinois and Nebraska go first, then you can ask me that question.
You got 45 seconds. All right, Representative Gustafson.
Chelsea and I don't agree on everything, but I certainly agree with this one. It's a pretty down on my list. I'll have to see more about it to see the pros and cons before I get into this one. Thank you.
Mr. Marquardt.
See, now to really stir the pot, I just assume they daylight savings time permanent. They're not.
That's not the question.
I know. Well, it just seems to work better with my life. So, no, boy, that's not something I really honestly considered like as even coming up before today. So, I'm certainly going to entertain it and look at it. I think it's an interesting thing to discuss. I think, given our current situation, there's a lot of other hot topics on the stove right now to deal with. So,
thank you, Mr. Sewell.
Just want to start by saying I'm extremely disappointed in Senator Selsey's softball answer. In all seriousness, though, this isn't something that comes up at noise, that comes up in forums, that comes up with everyday people. So I don't blame my fellow forum members for taking that road of the answer, and I'm going to follow it, saying it's not something that will gain traction in the legislature, I can imagine, with budgets, with education, with COVID lasting for who knows how long, with election season coming up, and who knows what changes may or may not come. There's going to be people who need to be served by many other issues. So it's not something I would look to co-sponsor. But I do understand that there is plenty of pros and cons. It's something that has been talked nationally across states, and people love the models in the state that does it. I can't remember which western state it is, but it's definitely not a huge priority.
Arizona, thank you. Senator Garrett.
Well, I would agree this isn't an issue that's had a lot of discussion or conversation. If I was going to entertain a change, I'd want to have a lot more discussion about it. It doesn't come up, and it's not something I want to just come off the top of my head on without really looking into it more and listening to a lot of people.
Thank you. Sounds like we'll be setting our thoughts falling back. Do you believe the governor has overstepped her authority by limiting local school board authority to determine operation plans in response to the pandemic? And Representative Gustafson, you're up first.
I would have to look at that in a lot more depth, because what the governor has done has been very, very successful by and large. Now, that doesn't mean everything. It could naturally be in that category, but certainly what the state has been doing, and she's been behind it, we are in a great position. Now, if you look at all the details in each category, that's another story, and you have to look at it. And in this particular environment, things change on a daily basis. I'm sure I don't have to get into that. I think we all know that. And you've also seen the scientists change their minds back and forth on some issues. So it's we are in a flux, certainly. So it needs to be looked at.
Next up, Ryan.
Can you repeat that question one more time?
I just want to make sure that I got all of them on time. Okay. Do you believe the governor has overstepped her authority by limiting local school board authority to determine operation plans in response to the pandemic?
Okay, so this is with regards to her emergency authority. Okay. So the way the legislature wrote that, they had an intention in mind, and I think there was enough ambiguity there that it ultimately broke in her favor. I think she probably is legally in the right. I mean, I think that's where we're at to do that, but should she is the real question. I don't think she should. I think she legally can, given the way the legislation is. I think school boards ought to set their own operation plan. I think the way that she changed stream midway through the whole process was messy and didn't have a good look for school boards. I mean, we had school districts had money invested and board time invested and staff time invested in that original plan, and a lot of school districts had to make an adjustment midstream because she changed the target. So yeah, I think legally she can. I think whether or not she shouldn't have. I think she should have let the school districts be.
Thank you. Okay. Aaron.
In regards to, do I think she overstepped her bounds? It's not relative in the frame of that the state Supreme Court said that she was following the guidelines of the law that was written. Now, I know there's plenty of frustration with legislatures who voted for that law on what the intentions were versus the definition and everything there. My frustration, being an educator in the midst of the summer, waiting for these plans to come out, is I guess, is the timing of her announcement, of her, I like the idea that we're giving parents the option to go online. You don't feel safe, have your kids sign up, do online for the semester, next semester, whichever. And then, making sure that kids have that opportunity to be in class. A lot of kids need to be in school. So my biggest frustration is I kind of wish that announcement was made clarified at the beginning of the summer when schools were in the midst of these plans, so they could plan appropriately and not scramble. I'm excited to see and proud how they got on their feet and got it rolling. But yeah, that's my perspective.
Thank you. Senator Jarrett.
Well, the governor's following the law. We passed a bill in the legislature saying that preponderance of class time has to be, or of teaching, of educating, has to be in the classroom. And that bill was passed unanimously. Everybody voted for it, Republicans and Democrats. And so the governor looked at the law and said, I think preponderance, I think that means more than 50%. And that's what she did. And she got a lot of criticism from some people, but that's what the law was. That wasn't the governor's just coming up with an opinion on her own. She was following the law that the legislature passed unanimously.
Thank you. Senator Selsey?
I was on the Senate floor when that bill was passed, and that was not the discussion that was had. I went back and watched it, and the bill that was before us was more of a Band-Aid bill to try to help school districts and teachers to try to get their footing during the pandemic, knowing that there would be a sub shortage, knowing that some classes would probably have to go online, knowing there would probably be teachers quitting. That was the attitude of the bill. That was the intention of the bill. So I do think Governor Reynolds has overstepped her boundaries, especially as Aaron and Ryan mentioned, in the way that it was rolled out. She created absolute and utter chaos among school districts in Iowa and caused thousands and thousands of hours of wasted time with those folks. And I couldn't feel worse for voting for a bill that is now being used as an excuse for that.
Earlier, we mentioned, some of you mentioned child care, and as you know, this is a submitted question from our community. Without child care, many would not be able to complete their essential jobs. Doctors, nurses, cashiers, grocery store employees, first responders, teachers, so many more would not be able to provide the necessary tasks that Iowans need. Child care truly is the workforce behind the workforce. Additionally, many families struggle to pay for quality child care. What will you do to enhance and support our child care system in Iowa? And Mr. Marquardt.
It is mine? I was thinking it was somebody else. All right.
So I think the first thing we do is we make sure that we are supporting these businesses right now. A lot of them have additional costs, so we need to make sure that we are providing potentially tax incentives for them, whatever it takes really to make sure. But we've lost a lot of child care providers. About 50% of our providers are no longer out there right now. 50% of our capacity is gone. So what can we do as a state to get in there and get more of these back online? So at least put, to stabilize the situation. Is that the small business loans that I mentioned earlier through banks, using rainy day funds, whatever tool we can find, we need to throw at this because it's one of the major workforce issues here. I don't think there's one specific way to fix it, but anything we can do, we need to look at.
15. Thank you. Mr. Sewell.
My wife and I rent a house in Valley Junction. We decided to live off my teacher's salary, and she was going to stay home with our daughter Reagan. She's going to be mad at me. She's 14 months old. And we were fortunate enough to make that decision. We have a fine life. We still have 2 vehicles. We have a nice yard at our rental home. We love our neighborhood. A lot of people can't make that decision. A lot of parents, single mom, single dad, women trying to get college degrees, aren't able to make that decision of keeping their child home safe or with a quality care center because of the lack of funding, because of the lack of availability. So we need to find ways to invest in child care. We need to find ways to do it responsibly, not just write checks and expect it to solve problems magically, but really work together, no matter the party or the designation or the part of the state, to try to solve this issue because it's an Iowa problem. It's a daily Iowa problem. We need to invest in the Iowans.
Senator Garrett.
Well, this is one of those issues that's, I think, fairly easy to talk about in general, but the problem is when you get down to writing up a bill, what the details are to be and how it's to be paid for, maybe additional tax credits, deductions, but this isn't an easy question, and I think it would take some thoughtful consideration to come up with the details of a bill and how much can we afford to spend in this area and this other area and so on. These kinds of questions are not easy to answer just in generalities. You need to really give it some thoughtful consideration.
Thank you. Senator Selsey.
There's probably not been a subject that has had more thoughtful consideration than child care in the state of Iowa. I sit on the board of ECI, Early Childhood Iowa. There are a multitude of things that we could be doing to solve this problem, and this was pre-pandemic as well as now. We need to raise the minimum wage. Child care workers are some of the lowest paid individuals in the state. We need to increase the percentage of poverty that you need to qualify for federal and state aid for child care assistance. And you need to help providers with their licensing and training so that we can have a more qualified child care workforce. Those are easy things we could do. It's an investment in our children, it's an investment in our provider community, and it's an investment in our economy. And to not do those things when we absolutely know that we should be, and have $309 million in the bank is obscene.
Thank you. Representative Gustafson.
Thank you. It's actually 305 million, but not a global. And there was a child care plan in the House last year before COVID hit. And what that plan would have done, reduce child care costs, incentivize businesses to offer daycare, and increase access to providers. And I have confident we'll be up again. And so we'll be seeing what it looks like and what we can do with it. And then, as we say, we have some assets we can use to help that situation out. We know it's a problem, so, and it has started to be looked at. I'm sure it's going to come up again.
Thank you, and I think we're at the last question. We have about 5 minutes left. So congratulations, you made it this far. Okay, mental health care is a growing need in our communities. Warren County in particular does not have adequate resources, and many residents must go to Polk County for services. The state has passed needed reforms in our mental health system, in particular, reforms which create our first children's mental health system in the state, but funding is needed. How will you work to create a permanent funding source for mental health care in our state? Aaron?
I get to work with amazing educators, amazing students. I get to live in an amazing neighborhood, an amazing state. And mental health has come up across every community, every school district in some way or another, whether it's a family member, whether it's a child we work with, whether it's a child in our family, a coworker. Everything we need to do to support Iowans daily needs to be done responsibly. But just because it might be difficult to do doesn't mean we can't try. It can be really hard. Politics, government, legislation is extremely confusing. I've worked in the Missouri Capitol and I've seen how the pork gets made, sausage gets made. It's just because it's difficult doesn't mean we can't try.
15.
But there's so many people that affect. It's not even a partisan issue. So many people it affects that we need to try and help. Because these are our neighbors, these are our family members, and we need to do everything we can, whether it's long-term or seeing what we can do short-term to support them here in our county and across the state.
Thank you. Senator Garrett.
Well, this is one of the biggest problems that's facing the state. It's something we've been working on for several years. In fact, I served on one of the original work groups when we were changing over the system from a county-by-county system to the regions that we have now and getting the state more involved. The goal was to provide care for anyone in the state, and where it wouldn't matter what particular county you lived in, because back at that time, different counties had different levels of service. And so we've been working on this for a number of years, and I suspect we're going to work on for a few more years yet. It's going to be expensive. We will do what we can this coming year, and as I say, we're going to be working on that for several years.
Senator Selson.
Iowans are sick to death of talk. We know what needs to be done. There are two sources that should be used for mental health funding. One of them is already in place. Every county has a property tax levy. Some of them have not been raised since 1996, and it has not kept up with the need. So I support that the property tax levy be raised to keep up with the increasing population and the increasing need. Then we also need to find a permanent solution from the state. I would suggest when we raise the sales tax for the penny for the water quality initiative that voters passed in 2010, that we use part of that penny sales tax money to go directly to mental health, and that it be permanent, so that, we're not going to be blowing in the wind every time there's a recession. We'll have less money, but at least it'll be a dedicated funding source that can't be moved.
Thank you. Thank you. Representative Gustafson?
Thank you. Iowa is the 7th best state for mental health care. So says Mental Health America's State of Mental Health in America report in 2019. Now, I know we haven't worked at mental health it was several years, and we were just getting into the child mental health care recently. And when you take a look at that report and break it down, Iowa's number 3 for adult mental health care, number 4 for adult access to care, number 17 for youth access to care, and number 18 for child mental health care. The point being is we have to do something about the child mental health care part of this formula. And we have done a much better job on the adult mental health care, so we can apply one to the other. We just have to get at it.
Thank you. Ryan?
So the numbers I just heard, I have a lot of doubts about in that study. I mean, my opponent has voted against improvement plans to children's mental health care. He voted in 2018. He's voted budgets that have cut to mental health care facilities. The reality is that we have a lot of needs that aren't being met in the state. We have some things we could do to look at funding them. We have this unfunded mandate with the children's mental health care system. We put it on the regions to develop. We haven't really given it a funding stream. They have a limited amount of time to develop that. I think midway through this year, I think they're supposed to have developed plans for what that's going to look like. The reality is there's money out there we could look at. There's the research tax credit we could roll back. There's a bunch of tax credits that we have in place that don't sunset, aren't reviewed on a regular basis, and we should just go through and put those in when we put those in place and make sure that they sunset, so that we recognize that when we do those types of things, that those are expenditures for the state and that they can be directed to other services.
Thank you.
Well, we are right at 8:15, but I think it'd be appropriate to end tonight by giving you each just a minute to close, saying whatever you want, and we'll just return back to our original order, and begin with Senator Garrett and Senator Scelsi, and then Representative Gustafson, Mr. Mark Martin, and finally Mr. Sewell. So I'll start the clock. 1 minute, whatever you want.
Well, thank you again for hosting us this evening. I hope the viewers have enjoyed the conversation. We talked about quite a few things. When we reconvene, as I talked about a little earlier, my goal will be to do everything we can to address the needs that we have, but do it with the taxpayer in mind too, and to budget responsibly so that we're not over-promising, we're not having to go back on our word after we've made appropriations. And that's been my goal, and that's what I have advocated for all the years I've been in the legislature on the Appropriations Committee. Budget responsibly, and in a year like this, we're awfully glad we did. We're not in a position of a lot of the other states that are running deficits and are in a huge fiscal messes.
Thank you. Senator Scelsi.
Thank you again for having us tonight. It's actually kind of nice to get out of the house once in a while and see and be seen, so thank you. If I had a checkbook full of $309 million and I never paid my bills, I'd still have $309 million in there. We have not fulfilled the wishes of Iowa voters by hoarding money in our savings accounts when we have raging needs in our state. So it's very disappointing to see this happening when we have so many unmet needs that we've talked about tonight, most of them. So what I would suggest is that the fiscally responsible thing to do is spend that taxpayer money on the priorities that they voted for when they voted for us, and that was to be good stewards of their money, yes, but actually use it for stuff that we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Gustafson.
Yes, thank you for having us tonight and give us an opportunity to discuss these subjects. Again, I'll talk about the budget because that is, I think, the most important thing. If we want to get things done, we have to have money to do it with. Last year, I think we spent over $50 million on another payment on the iJobs bond that we inherited from Governor Culver. And I think it was a $700 million bond that we'll be paying $1.5 billion at least on by the time we're done. And I'm sure there won't be any of the people that want child health care or anything else, and identify what that money is being used for.
15.
The point being is the budgeting is the most important thing, and that's what we have to look at and use wisely. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Marquardt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think what I bring to the table is a diverse background from city planning to governance to agricultural, for a district that ranges what the size of this district does. I mean, this district, as I mentioned earlier, includes Norwalk, it includes a whole swath of rural and developing area. It includes what will be the south end of Des Moines in the future as Des Moines moves southward. I think it's important to recognize that you need a representative with a skill set that can cover all the bases. I think it's also important that you have a representative that's engaged, that shows up in your community, that holds a town hall more than once every 3 years, that and has open lines of communications with your local government and your districts, and is here to serve you, and is easily accessible through the internet and all the modern means that we communicate. So, thank you.
Thank you. And for the close, Mr. Sewell.
It's truly an honor just to be up here amongst elected officials who have passion, who have perspectives, who see issues through different lenses, different lights. The trick is getting us all to come together and work together. The people out there who want us to serve them, to lead them, want people that they believe in them, want people that will serve them, not people that are looking to score political points or people that are looking to only work with one set of ideals. And that's why I'm running. That's why I'm running for office, because I believe in people. I believe in serving people. I believe that people should come first over any red or blue district. We all have our differences, but we all have so many things that are alike as well. And when we take time to listen, when we take time to learn why we believe the things we do, we get a lot further. And that's why I'm running for State House, and that's what I'm hoping to do with these ladies and gentlemen up here, and I'll get an opportunity to work with the leaders in this community as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here, to our senators as well as those who are running for re-election and for election and to be our representatives. We appreciate it. Thank you to the Norwalk Schools for hosting us, to the staff and the students who are running our cameras and sound tonight. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you to all those who are watching us online or who will in the future watch us. We encourage you all using whatever platforms you have to share the video with your constituents so they can see what happened tonight. And if you need any help with that, the link or anything, just let the Norwalk Chamber know and we'll make that happen. Just a reminder for everyone, today, in fact, began absentee voting. And so if you requested an absentee ballot, it should have been mailed out today. You can also, starting today, vote absentee in person. But Election Day is November 3rd, and that's quickly approaching. So we just do our best to make everyone aware of that. That election includes, yes, our candidates for president, for Congress, for Senate, but also these candidates for state representative as well. So make sure you look at that ballot and flip it over and vote for everyone and to do your part to be educated on the issues. So on behalf of the City of Norwalk, thank you, Luke Nelson, for co-moderating tonight, to the school district and the Norwalk Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for being here, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Probably have one of those.